You're listening to the E-commerce Impact Podcast, where we share the latest marketing strategies to grow your e-com store and have more impact. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the E-commerce Impact Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Krisi Smith, co-founder and creative director of Bird and Blend Tea. She's the visionary behind the incredible tea innovation at Bird and Blend Tea, starting the business from a back bedroom and learning to code her first website. And she continues to lead their now multi-million-dollar e-commerce store with a passionate team around her. So welcome to the show, Krisi. No worries at all. So my first question to you is, how did it start and where are you now? And then what are have been the wins and challenges along the way?
Great question. So yeah, as you mentioned in my intro, it started with that classic proper hustle startup story. So from my mum's back bedroom. But if we rewind another year before that, I was actually out in Canada. I'm a ski instructor and I was trying to avoid getting any sort of proper job in air marks. I'm pretty academic, but I'm also creative, and there was a lot of pressure from my family and friends to sort of, get on a grad scheme in London and be a banker or a lawyer. And I was like, no, I'm gonna go and ski. Yeah. So I was out there and I was looking for a business idea, to be honest. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do. And it's funny because in the food and drink industry in particular, a lot of companies have started from a passion for the product. And although I am passionate about tea and I'm an expert in the industry now, at the time, it was more about looking for a great opportunity to start a business. So I happened upon the North American tea market while I was out there and just thought to myself, why is no one in the UK doing tea in this innovative way? There's so much you can do with it. We're a nation of tea lovers, and yet it's all linked. It was back then all linked to origins, health, and quite a lot of sort of very premium. You know, if you like tea, you had to go to sort of a tea connoisseur, and you had to know all the language, or you enjoyed like afternoon tea with chintzy, and North America just aren't like that. They're just really innovative. So I thought, right, let's go and give this a shot for the summer when I had no work. So I moved, me and my business partner at the time, moved back to the UK in with my mum, and she said, oh, you can have 6 months and then you've got to get a proper job. I think she was chuffed. She was like, great, Krisi's coming home. And then I said, oh, by the way, I'm starting a company. And she was like, what? Yeah, we did that.
And is anyone in your family an entrepreneur?
No, I was actually the first person to go to uni out of my family as well.
Wow.
So, and I don't think I knew I was an entrepreneur. I think I got described a lot as being, troublesome and, awkward and asking questions. And as a teenager, that was really tricky. But as I've grown up and sort of owned it, I've realised that they're all the things that you do describe an entrepreneur as. So being criticised for it as a teenager, I'm now praised for it as an adult, which is a strength. But
I noticed when I was doing some research prior to the interview that you've had quite a lot of jobs. I'm the similar actually person that's had quite a lot of jobs. Even my sort of uni jobs, they would just never last. And I think again I had that like similar kind of asking too many questions, trying to do it in a different way, and that I was actually a frustrated entrepreneur. But I'm interested in people that are entrepreneurs so soon. Like you had, those part-time jobs around, or those travel jobs. Were there any kind of serious jobs that you had before you started on this venture, or was this
Not
kind of it? This was it. This is what you threw yourself into.
Pretty much. I mean, I was 23 when we made that decision to move back to start the business, and I had done a lot of traveling before as well, and a lot of jobs. So, I had a lot of world experience for a young person. Looking back now, I can't believe it really, but I didn't have any proper jobs. No, I had some jobs where my employers thought that it was a proper, life. And I sort of found myself in my one-to-one saying, yes, I absolutely want to be a production assistant for the rest of my life, or yes, I want to be a deck collector. That's absolutely my passion. Thinking it's absolutely not my passion. That's not.
Yeah. Oh God, I've been there. So so you started this business in your mum's back spare bedroom, and she gave you 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, starting a product business and making it profitable is definitely not a 6-month endeavor generally.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to a point where it was, you know, a business that was going to pay its way for you at least, and kind of be a serious business that your mum would take seriously?
Well, they're two different questions, I think, but yeah. So we bootstrapped massively in the first year. So everything, you know, we would just call up and down the country for any festivals or markets or anything that was last minute, say, have you got a free spot? We'll come down. Like I said, in my mum's back bedroom, sleeping there, making the tea there, didn't spend any money on anything really other than the product, and did all of the hours ourselves, the two of us.
Wow.
So we did make a profit, but back then, you know, you're reinvesting it all into the business and it's not paying a decent wage. So, you know, it's a bit of a false economy. Yeah. I think we properly hit a turning point when we opened the first store in 2014. Yeah. So that was 2 years in. That's when we moved to Brighton to open the first store. Chose a really cool spot down in the lanes, really independent, and lots of cool stuff going on. The landlord and landlady took a chance on us because we didn't have any, you know, proper accounts or anything. And I look back now and think that was a really lucky break, actually. When then this weird thing happened that we had the website. It wasn't turning over huge amounts, but probably 6 figures probably by then. And so we thought we were running a successful-ish business from zero on £5,000 savings is all we'd spent of our own money. And it wasn't until we opened the store that everybody started to sort of went, wow, like you have a proper business. And it's so strange that the concept of having an actual high street location, suddenly it's such a traditional view, but everyone sort of went, oh wow, like you've got a shop, you're serious now. And I was kind of like, well, we've been serious for 2 years, you know. No? So yeah, probably 2014 was the turning point where people realised that we were serious about this, and that was 2 years in. So we were just about over that risk period of starting a new business, and everything was looking pretty good. The signs were looking good. So yeah.
And so prior to the store opening, had you seen it as was the plan to be bricks and mortar, or were you trying to make it work as a website and promoting yourselves at kind of like events and things and trying to drive an audience that way? What was there a strategy to kind of being bricks and mortar or being e-com, or
we, again, uniquely to us, we were always set out on being a bricks and mortar business. We had loads of advice at the beginning saying, you've got a cracking product, just get it on the supermarket shelves, don't open stores, the high street is dying, you'll have to recruit hundreds of people, it'll be a nightmare. And we just, we ignored that. But mainly because both Mike and I have stuck to our guns on what we're passionate about, and it was about building a business that we wanted to be in, and it was always about people. And you know, our mission statement at the start wasn't anything to do with tea. It was about building a profitable business that put people first. And you know, by having retail stores, we were able to employ more people. We were able to create the types of jobs that we wish we'd had when we were, you know, scrabbling around on the part-time circuit. And we were able to create spaces where, you know, our customers could come and interact with us. We started stalls, so we loved the immediate feedback you get from your customers. And I believe that strategy, although it wasn't well thought out other than what I've just described, is what has made the e-com side of things so popular and so profitable, because we did 2 to 3 years solid in front of our customers. So every piece of feedback gave us went into the product, went into the e-com.
That's so interesting. And so now here you are with 14 stores. And what's the mix now between revenue that comes from online and comes from the bricks and mortar?
We're about 55% online at the moment in terms of revenue, which I'm chuffed about, and I'm going to keep. That's my area. So I'm the goal over the next couple of years is to keep growing, you know, really quickly on the digital side. We are planning to open a couple of new stores a year, but we want to keep that mix predominantly online. A lot of our customers come and hang out with us in the store if they're local, or they'll come and visit us at a desk. So we try to open the stores in destinations, and then they get the real experience, the theatre, the demos, the team in the store. They feel like they're a part of the brand, and then they go on to shop with us online. So the store
amazing
to our e-commerce customers' lifetime value. They're like a massive part of the strategy. So even though I'm driving digital growth and digital acquisition, we still put a lot of our effort and energy in the marketing to make sure that a customer, even if we've acquired them digitally, and they'll spend the most of their money digitally, that we inspire them to get in store at some point because it's so valuable.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you do a lot of work to kind of cross-pollinate the two kind of channels, if you were? So like, are you like in-store kind of getting their email address, or online kind of telling them about the stores that are near them? Like, what are you doing to kind of move people across the two sides?
Yeah, both of those things. So we do some quite direct bits and pieces around targeting through marketing, and everyone in store gets asked to join up. So we, they get added to our marketing, and they've got, personalized marketing based on where they signed up. So if they signed up in the Brighton store, we speak to them differently and try and figure out where they're from and whether they've just been visiting or whether they live in Brighton. And then we also use our website very much and our mailing list very much as a sort of hear first. You hear about things first, or the drops happen there first. So we have a lot of store customers that get their information from our website and from our marketing. So if there's a big drop happening, on a Sunday morning, they'll wait, they'll look at it on the site, they'll research it, they'll get their email, and then they'll literally queue outside their local store to get whatever it is that they've, researched. So
wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you've got like a sort of Apple approach to the kind of the product launches.
Yeah. And then for the rest of the marketing, we just make sure that, I just try and make sure that the team, although the team are very e-com focused, that their marketing is providing a lot of content of what's going on in the stores. We have awesome events, loads of community UGC coming in, pouring in. And we just make sure we share that and make sure we're putting out that we're an in-person community that they could be a part of. Yeah, I also try and recruit into my entry-level roles over on digital and marketing from the stores if I can. So I pull them over, which is again fantastic for the business, but also that desire to create a business where jobs can be what you want them to be. I would have loved if some of my jobs, on shop floors back in the day, you had an opportunity to be lifted into the marketing department. That would have been awesome. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about like how your values have shaped the way you've shaped the business, like both for you and your business partner.
Yeah. So Mike and I are very different people. We have different outlooks. We have different ways of working. We have different strengths and weaknesses, which on the whole are complementary. But I'm not going to lie, over the years, it has been challenging. I think it's challenging to run a business with anyone.
Imagine.
And you share all the highs together, but you share all the lows, and it can be really tricky. And I think the thing that's kept us on the straight and narrow is that we've never wavered from what, the core purpose of what we're doing and our values.
Yeah.
And I think that's because when we started, we didn't use like a marketing or a branding agency that said like, what's your story? What are your values? We just did it. And when we left Canada, we sat in a pub and wrote literally on the back of a napkin, like 4 things that were important to us. And then they remain the sort of 4 values that we follow. And have never wavered from that, which has been like the DNA that we fall back on if everything gets a bit wobbly out there. Like, right,
yeah.
Do we still believe in this? Yes. Are you still passionate about this? Yes. Okay, right. Well, let's keep going and find a different way of doing it.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So do you bring your values into your, like overtly into, say, the recruitment process? Are you checking whether people kind of share your values before you hire them, or do you have a way of doing that?
Yeah, we do. We have a cultural round on our interviews specifically for that reason, where they get to meet a random selection of people across the business. You know, if I'm interviewing someone, I'm going to give you the pitch of Bird and Blend, but it's really important that they see behind the scenes and meet some people, and we also throw them onto a shop floor as well and see, you know, whether because if they're not mad about the customers and, you know, love people and, you know, care about the world around us, then they're not going to be our type of person. That said, we do try our best to be as open to different types of people as possible. And I think that's something that's really important, that just because someone doesn't work in the way that you work, or maybe sees the world in a different way, doesn't mean that they can't value. But those sort of values underpinning what we're about, you kind of have to have them. If you don't have them, it's not like we'd like sack you or anything. You just wouldn't enjoy it. So, you know.
You wouldn't thrive. Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Like, to have the values written down is so important, because then you've got like a kind of framework to base the decision on, rather than what entrepreneurs can sometimes tend to do when they're in a hurry, is just base it on their gut. And that's where you get people just hiring their likeness over and over. And like you said, if we want to promote diversity, we need to have, you know, different types of people and like maybe challenge our own assumptions about who we want to work with. But if you have a framework in terms of they must have a certain type of value underpinning them, even though they're a different sort of person, that can really help. That's what we've found as well in the agency, like really being clear about like making sure we test and kind of find a way to tease out the people's values to make sure they're a fit has really helped us. Cool. So there's a stat I found recently which kind of surprised me. 96% of e-com stores fail. I mean, and I know you're not technically an e-com store, but I think business failure rate is probably around those sort of numbers. So why do you think you've been so successful? You've been 10 years in business now, and, you know, clearly across all the markers, a really successful business. What do you think has made you different from those businesses that haven't made it along the way?
Yeah, great question. I think there's not just one magic solution, and I think looking back on it, it's easy to, with hindsight, pick out the things, but at the time you just feel like there's a mountain ahead and you're just taking like one little step at a time. That's the only way you can start a business. If you thought about what was coming up, if you knew what was coming up, I don't think anyone would start. I think we were in the right place at the right time. You know, the market that we chose was taking a turn and booming, and we noticed that, and we checked that. We didn't do extensive market research in terms of the more formal channels because we didn't have any money, but we did do research. And in the early days with the stores, the locations, you know, we went and sat and we counted people walking past, whether they had shopping bags, whether they had buggies, whether they, you know, we went and visited the unis that were local and like got to know the students. We'd try and do events in the areas to make sure that, you know, those areas were the right types of people. Used our e-com data as well to see where people were. So we did try to back as much as we could in research and data, even in the early days. And we bootstrapped everything, which was really difficult, but actually meant that Mike and I learn all of the aspects of setting our business up. And because we did that every day, day in, day out, when we started growing or thinking about growing, we had a really strong, you know, knowledge underpinning, not only of our business and what we were passionate about, but the actual fundamentals. You know, Mike was running our finances. I learnt to build the first website. You know, we didn't use any external agencies at that time. We didn't have any money, and it meant that we got really under the hood, and it was an invaluable start to business. And I cannot, you know, promote it more. It is a hustle. We worked 7 days a week, you know, 16, 17, 18 hours a day some days for 2 years. When we opened the first store, you know, I managed the shop floor in the day, and then I do, you know, the e-com overnight, because I wanted to know whether or not this model was going to work, and I needed to be there firsthand to make that call. And then once we'd proven those points, we then started investing in money, external help, especially, you know.
but from a place of knowing what you were talking about and being able to like hold them to account and talk the talk. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. That's the advice I give to early stage e-com founders is like, you have to learn on the marketing side. You have to learn the fundamentals of like media buying and email marketing and, you know, branding to an extent, because otherwise, you know, your agency's not going to know as much about your business as you are. And if you're kind of working with an agency that doesn't know or necessarily care, you're going to potentially throw away a ton of money before you get to the result that you need to. Whereas if you learn it fundamentally yourself, then when you do get to the stage of being able to hire an agency, you're talking to them, you know, on their level. So I think that is really interesting that you had that experience as well.
It's as well, like it's very accessible. You know, I just learned through the internet. You know, there's loads of really cool courses and resources that you can do for free. Reading, you know, we've always had a massive stash of books, and then just asking people. You know, we in the early days we had a mantra that we would just say yes to everything, because you don't know who you're going to meet and when that's going to come back around. And we started building this of cool people, and if I met someone that had something interesting to say, I'd literally, like, I can remember being at networking and awards in the first couple of years and just chewing people's ears off, like, please tell me about this, like, what's going on in this, you know?
Yeah.
And what you tend to find is that if someone's an expert at something or passionate about something and they're happy to talk to you, it lights them up. So that's
cool.
it,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And in terms of like mentors, have you had, you know, business coaches? Have you paid mentors to like give you advice, or has it tended to be more just online courses, that kind of thing, and then networking?
We have got a really cool, like, small group of kind of mentors, advisors. We have never paid for it, Mike and I, but we are fortunate to have attracted some cool people along the way who are very willing to give their advice and support, and we've been able to be a little bit, you know, picky about who we keep in that sort of circle. We've got people from different industries, you know, e-com, logistics, finance, private equity, and
amazing. So you created like your own kind of mini mastermind.
Pretty much, and I guess kind of like a board, but we've never had a board, and we didn't know that what that was, and it just meant that, you know, we can take their advice or not, and that's the key thing there. And we haven't hit the stage yet where we felt like we needed to pay for that or bring someone on in a more formal capacity. And I think, again, that's just because we're inquisitive, we're passionate, people believe in the business, so they're happy to, you know, help you along the way. In the very early days, it was difficult to cut through the noise of, you know, there's vast amounts of people out there that want to be your mentor, or that would charge you for that, or that perhaps give you advice that you don't know is right or wrong. And I said, we did told a lot at the beginning. Don't run a massive people business, outsource everything, you know, be a supermarket brand. And it was difficult because you're sitting there thinking, well, this person's a really successful business person, so I should probably listen. They must know more than I do, because I've only been doing this 18 months. But rather than it being that I thought that I knew better because I didn't have more experience, it's that I had those fundamental values and the mission statement of growing a people business that was going to do some good in the world. That when I circled back on that and was like, does this advice fit with that? The answer was no. So even though it may have got us more revenue quicker, you know, probably would be a much more, you know, profitable or valuable business, it didn't fit with what we wanted to do. And because it was about building a business that we were, you know, really happy to be in, day out, that stopped us from taking advice that perhaps would take us off that tangent.
Because ultimately we're in business, you know, to have the life that we want to have. Like, if we're in business just for the money, then we're going to be very unhappy people, I think. There's only very few people that are made happy just by like financial success. So I think it's something that as business people, we need to remind ourselves all the time, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And is this decision going to lead me towards what I actually want? Yeah, it's often a really tricky one to pin down.
It is. I think it can be done. And there are some examples, especially in the e-com space, where you can do it with just a really small team and some cracking agencies, and but you do have to spend a fair amount in advance to sort of get yourself up and running on that. And I've got a couple of peers that have outsourced the whole of their branding and literally said, I've got a vague idea, please come up with my brand, come up with my strapline, come up with my mission statement, sort my packaging out, build my store. And yeah, I mean, it's just not the type of business that I wanted to do at that time. That didn't excite me.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a little bit of a sort of a thing at the moment that building an e-com business in particular, especially coming out of COVID, it's really trendy. It's like this, you see these really big brands like Gymshark, and they're kind of like lifestyle influencer crossed with e-com, and people think like, let's do that. And actually, if you're not passionate about it, then you're going to come unstuck pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, completely.
But yeah, not to discourage anyone from giving it a go, because I absolutely think anyone can do it, and if you want to do it, you should. But it's a weird. Well, you must be seeing this as well, Jessie. Like, it's a weird world out there at the moment with coming out of COVID, and everyone started an e-com business, and all the marketing stuff's going all haywire, and we're like, what's going on?
I guess in some ways it's never been easier to start a business than ever before. But actually, we're hitting these headwinds now that I think e-com as a whole, as an industry, although as an industry it's still growing, it's much more challenging. It's so much more competitive. Like post-COVID, I think, all these people that just don't want to work for the man anymore, they're figuring out different ways of doing it and maybe thinking it's easier than it actually is. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint, to grow an e-com brand. And I think it is tough for brands getting started right now. If they were started in the beginning of 2020, they might have had like a bit of tailwind behind them, like, pushing them forward. But now would be pretty tough. I think you have to have a bit of capital to start up, probably more than $5,000, I would say.
So I have no idea how if you have started an e-com business or any business during COVID, I have no idea how people are navigating, sussing out. I mean, we're finding it hard enough, and we have 8 years of, fairly stable trends, is pretty solid. We knew what our business was going into COVID. We knew the economics of it, and we could make decisions. And then we had this 18 months of mayhem, which you're just scrabbling to keep up. And it's all right to say, oh, well, e-com was booming. It was booming, but we lost 18 months of, really knowing our customers. And then we've come out the other side and realized that our customers have fundamentally changed. Their desires have changed. The way they shop has changed. And how a new business could go from having, like, if you imagine if your first year was a COVID year and then your second year was this year, you I have no idea how you would go about deciding.
I know. I mean, looking at year-on-year data is just impossible at the moment. And there's a lot of businesses that we've seen come to us who kind of like, oh, we started, we've been running for 2 years and we don't know what's happened. Our business isn't really working anymore. Well, if you started in the middle of the pandemic, you've got a long way to go to kind of become a solid business in the real world after that, I think. Yeah. So, it's challenging for sure. What about for you guys? What do you feel is the biggest challenge you're facing in terms of the marketing? Is it iOS 14? Is it the ad costs? Is it competition? What do you think is kind of making it hard for you at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think obviously it's bonkers out there with paid media. You know better than I do. It is. I think that for a brand like ours, we're fairly lucky because we are still pretty lean. We're innovative. I'm still very hands-on, and I drive, a very startup still mentality of, right, the team are all really empowered. If something's not working, let's change it. Let's test stuff. Let's be really quick about, stopping things that are failing and doubling down on things that are doing well. So being able to reassess where to spend marketing spend this year, the attitude we've got, which is great. And it's just been a lot of learning. We've gone into we're in 3 sprints at the moment, testing new channels, which we've never done 3 sprints at a time in new channels. And it's a bit of discovery, figuring out where to best spend your money. That's difficult. It's fun, but it's difficult. I think that the biggest challenge we're facing, to be perfectly honest, is people in terms of recruitment and retention, which is not something we've had before. We're a really decent employer. We're a living wage employer. We've got tons and tons of benefits on top of that in terms of learning and development, empowerment. We're a great place to work. I think the majority of people you could ask that work for us would say that they love their job most of the time. Never had a problem recruiting. We get hundreds of applicants on every job. But in the last 6 months, we've really, really struggled in both retail and digital marketing. And the problem just seems to be that, again, people have just reassessed their lives over COVID, and people that were in retail have either moved out of retail because they can't afford it anymore, or they've started a family, or they've changed industry. And in digital marketing, a lot of the more senior and experienced people it's basically their market. They can pick and choose whatever they want. There's so many brands out there wanting to supercharge their digital marketing that decent people the majority of people I've chatted to have become contractors or freelancers, and they're not interested in being in-house at a brand anymore because they can have a much better work-life balance. They can dip in and out of really cool brands, and getting bums in seats it's gone a bit bonkers, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to navigate that storm at the moment and improve, the way that we talk to people, the way we recruit people, improve, basically taking the recruitment side back into my team a little bit in the marketing. Because we've got to market our business. We have got to market our business. We're not interviewing them anymore. They're interviewing us. And that's a very new way of thinking about it. And actually, although it's a nuisance for me as an employer, it's probably a lot better for employees. Do you not think that's a better way of doing it? That employers should be, working hard. If you're valuable and you've got a lot to offer, we should be working hard to get you. You're worth it. So I think I quite like it, not as necessarily as a business owner, but I like it as in general. I think it's
as a trend in the world, yeah. And also, I think it probably does hold you to account as a business owner.
Yes.
I feel like in my agency, my main job as CEO is actually making, winning over the hearts and minds of my team so that they feel like this is something they care about. And if I can do that, then they'll serve the clients, and all of that work will happen naturally. So that's kind of what keeps me up at night, is thinking of how I motivate them and how I inspire them really as a leader. And, other ways we can make the role as attractive as possible. We're exploring the 4-day work week. We're looking at all the other benefits. I mean, and we're surveying, we surveyed our team the other day and asked them what their most important values were. In life, and the top value that came up for half the team members was meaningful work with purpose. And I guess that's natural because we're the kind of agency that works with purposeful brands, and we're all about that. So we're going to naturally attract those kind of people. But I think there's a lot of people, that are moving that way, that work is not just work for money anymore, because actually they could, if they wanted money, they could work anywhere, but actually feeling like the work is meaningful. So I think it's a huge, huge trend.
I think I also went to Brighton TED the other day, and they did a whole piece on this about happiness and fulfillment at work. And there was some bonkers statistics of something like 92% of people surveyed had said they would consider leaving their job in the last 3 months, had considered it at some point. And it's just, I thought it was going to be high, but I didn't think it was going to be that high. And I think, it's just people have been forced to reassess what's important to them. And I think that's and it's going to change fundamentally the way that we recruit people, work with people. Your work life has never been more joined, but also you've seen that you can have more of a work-life balance, and the world went quiet for a while. And why would we not want to, try and pull some of the good stuff out of that? The businesses out there got to keep up, and that's something that we have to do. Even 10 years in as an established business, we are paying a lot of attention to this. We have to keep up with it. We have to evolve, because if we don't, the people are fundamental. So if we don't evolve and get the right people, our business is built on great people. So it's a massive risk factor.
Yeah, certainly. Cool. So changing tack a little bit, I'd love to hear what has been your most precarious kind of we almost died moment in business. I mean, if you guys were bootstrapping in those early days, opening those stores, were there some moments when you thought, you got so close to the wire that you might not survive?
Yeah, we had a couple. Touch wood, only a couple, which is great. We had a real tight cash flow issue in 2016, which, I don't know, it caught us by surprise. It shouldn't have done. We were fairly established by then, but we just took our eye off a little bit and realised that we had a bit of a cash issue, and we weren't sure if we were going to make payroll, and that was absolutely terrifying. We've never missed payroll, and, we'd have to be a doomsday situation for that to ever happen. It frustrates me when you hear stories of people that say, oh, I was paid late this month because, they didn't, whatever. I feel like, no, number one, you pay your team first, like that.
Absolutely.
Number one. But yeah, that was really a bit of a shock for Mike and I. I think we both started paying quite a lot of attention to growing the business and the fundamentals of the finances that Mike had been doing, day in, day out. He'd recruited some people, and we just took our eye off a little bit, but it was all fine. It worked out fine, but it was a good 4 months getting us back on track. And then that knocked us out going into Christmas, because this happened in the summer. And our business is very season based. We make all of our profit over the Christmas months. So we learned a really solid, and it knocked our Christmas out as well. So we learned a really, really valuable lesson about, cash flow and making sure we had money in the bank to last us through those quieter times in the summer. We also pulled out some learnings around how to boost revenue in the summer. So we now do a mid-year sale, which is the only sale we run. And we do a massive cold brew tea campaign. We kind of own that in the UK because it makes sense. No one wants to be buying hot tea online holiday in August. So we bumped up the number of events we were doing in store, and we basically evolved from that learning. So good stuff's come out of it, and touch wood, we've never had a problem again.
So knowing your numbers, knowing your seasonality really well, and having like a kind of marketing plan around that seasonality to kind of bolster yourself in the low season. That's really interesting. And you mentioned earlier, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's cool. I was gone. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about product drops and creating quite a lot of buzz around them and people queuing up outside the store. Because you do have quite a big product range, and you're constantly kind of innovating on like flavors and different kind of ways of approaching the product. Yeah. How does that work, and like how do you kind of link that to the marketing strategy, and is it basically fundamentally a marketing strategy to constantly be releasing new products?
Yeah, I think in the early days it was the only marketing we did. We had a small range in the early days, 21 tea blends, and I wanted to grow the range, and it kind of just made sense to me to have these seasonal drops. Every Easter we'd launch 4 new blends, and then I realized that, okay, cool, people are getting very excited about this. So what if we made them just for Easter? And at the beginning, it was kind of like, well, nobody's going to be wanting to buy Easter egg tea in August anyway. So let's limited edition, pull it back. And then, a couple of customers were like, oh, is there any way we can get them to return? So then we started doing things like vote backs, where our community could vote back a limited edition onto the tea wall permanently. So we started this cycle of releasing like maybe 4 or 5 collections a year. That was the only marketing we did. We'd do some vote backs to get them onto the wall, and the range started growing. And then we really amped that up in 2018, 2019. So our marketing calendar was all seasonality. We did Valentine's stuff, we did pancakes collections, all sorts of stuff. That was really cool, but very distracting for both us as marketeers and also for the customer, because we were noticing as our audience grew, it was becoming harder and harder to explain to them what a limited edition was, what it meant. If they, they were missing that things were going, they were missing the drops. And so in 2 years, we've actually changed the model up a little bit, where we have our tea wall. It's got 100 blends on it now that are permanent and across all different categories. And you can go online or go in store and choose your favourites from this massive range. The range is a bit of a nuisance in terms of stock and all of that. The more SKUs you have, it's a nuisance. But we wanted to have this experience where you've got all of these amazing, colourful, flavourful teas to choose from, like a pick and mix type experience. That's the USP we have. And then rather than doing loads and loads and loads of seasonal drops, we do maybe 4 a year, and we launch just 1 or 2 teas. So for Easter, we just did cream egg, and then we build product innovation around that for our super fans. So we did a tea-infused Easter egg, we did tea-infused chocolate, we did tea-infused candles. So those we then market heavily to our committed fan base that love that. But the sort of core range of great teas, we only really talk about those in our wider audience outreach, because if you imagine, with an ad or something, someone seeing a tea-infused Easter egg, we might get your attention, but it's kind of confusing to a new prospect. What do you do?
Interesting.
Are you a company? Are you, what is this? So we try to, I've been trying to get the team, who are all really creative, really innovative, and they're excited about this Easter egg because it's so cool to them. But I'm trying to remind them, actually, for our wider audience, if we're trying to gain new customers, they probably don't know what it is, don't care, they're not ready for that yet. Let's just focus on some of the A-game regular teas that are out of this world, like our chocolate digestives teas, like a breakfast tea that tastes a little bit like biscuit. It's great. If you've had I think one of the big brands ripped us off. Was it Tetley? Someone's done it. It's on the supermarket shelf, but ours is better, I promise. But that's entry level. If you like English breakfast, you like your tea with milk, it's got a little bit of chocolate, digestive. Why are we not talking about this? That's going to get people's attention. It's a little bit less scary than tea-infused Easter eggs, and we can do it all year round. So
yeah,
that's been what we've been focusing on. So still leaving space for innovation, but making sure it's not alienating our, growth, the audiences we need to attract for growth.
Yeah, that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. And in terms of so just going back to you mentioned about kind of that hairy moment you had with the finances, and you mentioned that you bootstrapped from the early days, but at a certain point you did raise some money, some investment, I think from a crowd cube. Is that right? Was there also private investors involved as well, or has it always just been crowdfunding for you guys?
Yeah, we've done 2 crowd fundraise, one in 2017, one last year. We do have a handful of investors that have put in slightly more money, but they also invested, we arranged it in advance, but they still invested through the crowd, so they have the same setup. We haven't done anything with PE or anything yet. Maybe in the future, that could be cool. But we chose to do the crowdfunding because we have this really active base of fans that were happy to, put a little bit of money in to be able to own a bit of the brand that they love, and also to help us on our journey. We've always told the growth story and been very authentic and personable. And we've built a community that are invested in our progression and growth. So crowdfunding made sense for us at that time. And also they become brand ambassadors overnight. We've got 1,500 investors. Mike and I still own by a long way the majority stake, and there's 1,500 people out there in the world saying, I own a little bit of Bird & Brand, and they talk about it and they tell their friends. So in terms of free marketing, I mean, it's not free.
Love it.
Yes, but yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, because you've mentioned a few times super fans and people lining up outside the stores, and now these kind of 1,000+ investors, what have you guys done proactively in terms of, from a marketing sense, to nurture that kind of community and involve them in your business? It sounds like you've done a great job of it. So I'd be interested to hear kind of what were the kind of techniques you used.
Yeah, we loved it. We loved the people. So we made those connections with the early adopters at the beginning. I still recognize, when people's names come through, from writing notes. We wrote notes on every single fulfillment online order, and I got to know, the customers. And over the years, that's now, smart segmentation and stuff. But back then I would literally notice that so-and-so was the same name of the person that I chatted to in the store last week. They'd already had this tea. Okay, what should they have next? So figuring out those customer journeys and segmentation, I was doing that, but I didn't know I was doing. The other thing we did is that we've always stuck to those original principles of the experience you get in store. Is still very similar to the experience that we did on the market stalls. The handwritten notes, the free samples in the orders, that's still happening. We could save a lot of money in our fulfillment room if we, because we do it all in-house, if we didn't ask the team to write those notes, but they do. They draw pictures, they tell jokes. There's still a very, human element to that. And then we also have always built that mailing list up to be a VIP space, so they always get treated to drops first and information and news. And in the last couple of years, we've set up a private group on Facebook, actually, called Brew Society. So the team members in store can invite anyone they want to join Brew Society. If they want to, they give them a little card that says join the club, and it's about 3,000 in there at the moment. And there's just a community of tea lovers. We don't market to them, really. They just chat to each other about the teas, not even burn and blend all the time, and that's fine. They arrange to meet up with each other, to go into store. They swap their teas with each other, post them all over the place. Yeah, it's just a really active community, and we don't manage it in terms of it being a marketing strategy. We just kind of created the environment where people can just be a part of that community. We've facilitated that. It's really cool. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it is really great, and I think you could be led to believe that the value of our business is solely in that group, and I mean, it is to this point, and they spend the most money, they are the most passionate, they are incredibly valuable. We love them. But when you're trying to grow a business and scale a business quickly, you've got to make sure that you're maintaining that culture with that super, fan group, but also your growth is going to come out of reaching as many new people as possible. And all of those people, they might not become a super fan, and that's okay. And how do you make sure that you don't, again, alienate those people by, quite a lot of our customers don't want to join a private Facebook group about tea. They just love some of the flavors, and that's fine. So you just got to keep half an eye on not losing track of that, I think, as you grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's challenging, isn't it, in this current environment where you are kind of on the face of it, you're a low average order value brand compared to a lot of e-coms, and compared to the price of acquiring a customer now. So you're actually, when you're spending money on marketing, you're actually betting on that repeat purchase. So you need as many people as possible to become super fans, or at least fans of some sort. But you're right, not everyone's going to love you. So I guess you just keep working on the ones that do and make them super, super fans. Cool. So I had only one more question, which is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners? I mean, thinking about people that are a little bit earlier on the e-com journey, or even people who are in a similar place to you, like lessons learned or advice from word from the wise.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I got given in the early days was if you're going to build a business that's got any people in it, and I think even e-com, you're still going to have people around you, whether it's working with agencies like yourself or whether it's employees, was to remember that you're not leading hands, you're leading hearts. And that stuck with me. And I thought, well, I'm a nice person. I'm a people person. I have no problem, leading people and communicating with people. But actually, it's a constant, I'm constantly working on bettering that, and I have done for the last 10 years. And like you said earlier, the role changes from doing to setting people up to be able to teach them to do, to then being inspiring and building. And I've gone through each of those, iterations over the years, and done a lot of self-reflection and learning to make sure that I'm ahead of that. And I think sometimes, especially as entrepreneurs, we can forget that we've got to keep learning ourselves, and we've got to keep, although we know our business the best and we're at the top of the pyramid in theory, you know, we own the business and all of that, I still, you know, challenge myself, you know, most days to think about how I could be better with the people, how I could be better, how I could stay ahead of the industry. And e-commerce is changing. Just sit and expect in a year's time thing. You have to evolve, and that takes a lot of effort and energy. So that would be my first one. The second one would just be to be kind to yourself. It's really brutal out there, especially if you're running a business on your own. I would advise, you know, build a network of people around you that will lift you up when you're down and that really understand what you're doing. I don't mean the technical side of things, but, you know, your family and friends that you have going into business may not understand, you know, quite what your reality is. And you can build a community around you of people that, you know, if you're having a really rubbish day, that they just, you know, they build you up and they remind you that you're doing a really good job. Or, you know, if you're in a bit of a dip, they give you a talking to and they say, come on, you know, you're doing great things, you know, get back to it. I think that's invaluable. You need it.
Yeah.
You need a community around you, in my opinion. So,
yeah. And thank you for sharing that too, because I think so often in business, there's like this toxic positivity around, you know, like everyone has to shout about their success. Me as an agency only have to shout about the success all the time. But actually, when you hear from other business owners that they do have those low periods, it makes you feel so much more understood that actually, you know, I'm not alone, and that like there's, you know, other people that are like struggling with what I'm struggling with right now. And I think, yeah, as business owners, we have to be real and honest so that we can make sure other business owners don't give up when you know, when it gets tough. So yeah, I think that's a really, really great piece of advice. Thanks so much for joining us here on the E-commerce Impact podcast. If I can ask you one favor, can you please make sure you subscribe? And if you can, leave us a review. It helps us have a much bigger impact with what we're trying to do here at the E-commerce Impact podcast. Now, if you're ready to take your e-com store to the next level, then go to www.ecommerceimpactpodcast.com and click on the button to book a strategy call with me or my team. We offer a free order of your advertising and a custom growth plan, so you really have nothing to lose by getting in touch and jumping on a call with us. See you soon, and watch out for the next episode in 2 weeks' time.